Right, I thought in this episode of Ralph's House I'd return to amusement arcade machines from the 50s and 60s. And if you've been watching Ralph's House for a while, you'll know that I've got a couple of, well, the Broadley All-Wins. One's an All-Win machine, an All-Wins Deluxe, and the other is a Bryans Pillwin. The Pillwin had these decorative brackets on each corner of the door. Well, they are actually brass, they're pretty heavy, and they were chromed when new, but you can see what's happened to the chrome over the years. But what I was thinking is, well, I could get them replated, but that's going to cost a fortune, and it's not something I feel I need to do at this stage, because I'm in the process or about to put the new case together and assemble the new front door. So what I was thinking of is, how about I make these, or make copies of them, in resin? And it's possible to get a very metal finish using resin, and then I can set these aside, and then maybe at a future date, if I can get a good price, or if anybody wants to volunteer to polish them and re-chrome them, get in touch, just leave a message underneath. I just think they'd be I don't know, I mean, look, that's the size of my hand. How much would it cost to do 4 of those? I don't know. Anyway, so I'm really forced down this route of using resin. And the way you do it is, well, first of all, you've got to make a mould of it. But I wouldn't particularly choose this one because the finish on it is pretty atrocious, isn't it? So what I've done, I rubbed one down, got it as flat as I could with wet and dry, and I've given it a coat of zinc spray just to even out the surface. Now that, I think, is good enough to get a mould from. My old favourite for these, well, for this size of object anyway, takeaway boxes. These are really good. They're so useful around the house, these. I wouldn't reuse them for food again, but I found lots of mixing plaster, all sorts. Really great. I even use them at work. Anyway, that fits in there just about right, I think. What I'll need to do is get some hot melt glue on the underside of it and stick it down to the base, and also fill in the very bottom of those holes as much as I can, because I'm going to get air bubbles however I do this, but that'll reduce the amount I get by doing that. And I can drill these in the resin afterwards if I need to, as long as I've got the basic shape there. So right, we'll fill it with some silicone rubber. Well, that's the silicone mould all poured. I should point out I don't have a vacuum or a pressure tank, but I have been quite lucky with this in terms of, you know, air bubbles. In an ideal world I'd put this in some kind of tank, but the little air bubbles do seem pop up, and because this is a day setting time, it gives it plenty of time to do that. Usually within an hour it all smooths out, and all these little pinholes, they're tiny air bubbles, can you see them? They all come out, and I don't mind them on this top surface, I just don't want them on the bottom where the actual piece is. But I say we'll come back in about an hour and we'll have another look. Well, it's a couple of hours later and it's gone off now, just to prove the point. But it won't fully cure until 24 hours have elapsed, which is what I'm going to give it. So we'll be back in 24 hours. And there we are, 24 hours later. Turn the mould out and just trim roughly around this edge, because basically I'll fill up to that line. Can you see? It's almost like a cliff edge. The piece came out clean out of the mould. Next job will be to brush in the metal powder. Crikey, it's not often I get into this. This is my art box. I'll tell you why I'm in here, because I'm looking for a paintbrush. Ah, there they are, down the bottom. I've got a lot of modelling clay stuff as well, because unfortunately I've had to put it on a back seat because I've got that many things on at the moment. But I've got another channel called The Factory, which I need to get on with. I should be doing that over the winter. But I need to get in here because I need a paintbrush to brush in this metal powder into the mould. It's finding the right one. Oh, it's a little on the stiff side. Oh, right. Of course, they stick them together with glory gum. Do you remember that stuff when you were kids? Glory gum. Gum Arabic, wasn't it? You had like a rubber nozzle and you had to, you know, takes you back to your childhood, doesn't it? That and what was the other thing they used to have at school? Copydex glue. Yeah. Do you know, some years ago, they decided to demolish my primary school. And I read it in the paper and I thought, well, it's an old building. It's going to disappear. And I went in to take some 360 panoramas. And when I say 360, I mean like the inside of a tennis ball. It takes a lot of work. Each one, about 80 photographs, something like that, because they were very high definition. And I went in and I asked the headmistress if I could, you know, because they'd already got the new school set up. And they were about to demolish the old one. And I said, would it be all right if I go into the old one and take some photographs? And she sort of looked at me and said, thought, why? You know, because I was about 50 then. You know, why is this 50-year-old man doing that? Anyway, I spent the whole day, took hundreds of photographs. And it was years later, she got in touch with me and she said, do you remember those photographs you took? I said, yeah. She said, do you think we could have a copy of them? Well, this is the point, isn't it? It was a moment in history gone. And it was kind of nice because all the photographs I took, for anybody else to look at them, because they were interactive. So you could actually get into the space where I took the picture and look around and look at the ground, look at the sky, look at the ceiling, whatever it was, and relive the experience. Well, you can't do that with a snapshot, can you? So that's why I did it. And I still do occasionally, although I tend to take pictures of industrial decline. Birmingham's very good for that. Very interesting, especially if you do it in black and white. I must link, I'll put a link to one of them underneath this video and you can have a look and you see the sort of stuff I did. Yeah, I think that brush will do, to be honest. Yeah, we'll use that one. What have we got on the second there? Some of this stuff I've kind of bought over time because my son and I are putting together an art studio downstairs and all this stuff will end up in it. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the other thing I'm going to need. For this bracket, when they were painted, because they're painted red and green after, you know, the chrome was, using Humbrol paints. So I'm going to have to find, you know, something like a cadmium red and a forest green, something like that, to replicate the originals. But I'll probably get some of those online. But yeah, these are all my clay tools. Right, we'll get all this out of the way and we'll start brushing that metal dust into the mould. I have to say, if you get this stuff on your fingers, it's incredibly greasy. You do have to go and wash it off with, well, not soap and water. You need washing up liquid and water to get it off in warm water. But I think what I'm going to do is, well, you don't want too much in it. Any excess, what you do is you turn the mould upside down on a piece of paper and, you know, drop it onto that and then put it back in the pot, I think. But we'll sprinkle a bit in and see how we get on. Interesting, isn't it? Well, this is an experiment. The other thing I was thinking, I've also got some, it was rather expensive. I think it was about £9 for a bottle smaller than that, actually, to be honest. But it's a paint that you paint on and it really does look like chrome. So that's another option. What I might do is cast one of these in just straight black and try painting it, but I don't know how resilient the paint is. But oh yeah, look, I don't know if it picks this up on the camera. I've got loads in here, haven't I? Got more than I thought. Can you see it coming up? Very shiny, isn't it? Yeah, this is the way to do it. Be interesting to see how this comes out once all the black's in there. Right, I'm going to spend, you know, you don't need to be watching all this, do you? I'll spend 4 or 5 minutes, go around, make sure I get right round these edges in here. Well, a word from the wise. Well, actually not so wise. I wasn't wise at all. When you're using this stuff, this Let's Resin metallic powder, it's made in China, so it gets everywhere. Look, I mean, I've got it's spread all on the mould, but that doesn't matter. It'll all wash off with soapy water. But look, if you just even brush past it, you know, well, actually, it's mostly dried off now, but you end up looking like the Tin Man. I ended up using a face mask because it was evident that it was airborne, because I could smell it, and I thought, I don't like the idea of that. You do have to be careful with resin, and you don't really want to be working it in a very closed space. There's been lots of people that, in the craft world that use resin have reported, having serious adverse effects. I keep a window open up here, and I don't spend a lot of time in it, but I do make sure I've got a passage of air. I had to stop with all that dust because I thought I'm going to have a whole office just covered in silver. Yeah, you even got the light switch, turn it on and off, then that becomes chrome. Like the Medusa touch. Yeah, so good stuff. You don't need very much of it. I've got these little cups. I couldn't tell you where you get these from. What I would say is, my employer, they've got a loft. I won't mention the name. Don't worry, I'm not going to mention them. But things accrue in the loft, especially kitchen items and things like that. And some of it's sat there for years. And a couple of the girls came across a bag of these things and said, "Are these any good to you?" And I said, "Well, I don't think so, because during the day I'm painting, painting and decorating, which I love, especially since I've had my cataract done, because I can see white now. But of course now I spot the flaws and rooms that I thought, oh, well, it didn't look too bad. Now I look at it, I think, oh, no, it's terrible, I've got to paint." So that's win and lose, isn't it? Anyway, but they asked me about these, and I said no. And luckily they didn't throw them out. They just sat there in the corner. And I thought, yeah, I can use them for mixing up resin. For small batches anyway. For larger quantities, I actually use plastic, what I would call kids' picnic cups. They're like bright coloured ones. Just about to get a very loud motorcycle go by. You'll have to bear with me. Yeah, so I use those because the silicone does peel off quite well, so you can get your cups back. With these, I don't bother, I just put them straight in the bin, But yeah, this is the resin that I'm using. It's called the Black Fast Cast resin on a 1-to-1 ratio. By weight, you can get lots of different kinds of resin that are 1-to-1. It can be 1-to-1 by volume, in other words, exactly the same amount as each in a measured jug. That would be 1-to-1 by volume. 1-to-1 by weight is not the same, because the catalyst, or the hardener if you like, may not be as dense as the other. You see what I mean? So that's why you have to. So in this particular case, I will need to weigh it. And these are the scales I've got. I think I bought these on eBay. Really, really useful. They go up to quite a weight. I'll show you them. Hang on. Actually, I've got two sets. I've got these Silvercrest. That will be... Is that Lidl or is it Aldi? Don't know, but I thought they were quite good. So you can zero out, or should be able to. Yeah. But actually I find these little ones were so much better, especially when you're using these things. Very accurate as well. I'm going to have to kind of guess the amount of resin that I'll need for the mould, but if I've got a little bit over, I'm not too worried, not at this stage, because this is an experiment one. Get it near enough, so I've got to do it by volume. So what does it say? Well, one goes, mixed by weight. Can you see that? Very important you read these. And the other bottle tells you which one. I think, you put A in first and then add B to it. So that's what we'll do. I'll pour some of this A into this cup, and whatever the weight of that is, I'll double it on the scales for the other one. Well, just match it and put one in each pot, and then I'll mix them. Yeah, that's what I'll do. 28.5. So I'm going to have to match that with part B. Different colour. You see that? 28.7. I mean, just fractionally over, but I don't think that's going to matter too much. But look, that's 28.7 and that's 28.5. There is considerably more in that one than there is that one. So that's why you have to do it by weight. There we are, that's the two parts mixed together. It sets within 30 to 40 minutes. That's pretty quick, isn't it? This will be fun to pour because it's very liquid. But it doesn't really harden up until a full 7 days. Like a lot of these resins, you think they're set, yeah they are, but they won't really harden until a week, possibly 2 weeks. That stuff sets really fast, really fast. I don't think you've even got a working time of 5 minutes. You've got to mix that catalyst in there, stir as quickly as you can and get it in the mould. And this is really hot, incredibly hot. It's a polyurethane resin. It's not, well, it's not, I use the stuff that perhaps takes, 12, 24 hours to set, but this is 5 minutes and pour it in. So look, that stick is in there solid. So that will be the same in there, I should think. Even though it looks like it's wet, I should think that's almost gone off. But we're going to give it the full hour. It says 30 to 40 minutes, so we'll give it an hour and then we'll demould it. I can't wait to see what it looks like. Well, I'd call that a raging success. A complete experiment. It came out far better than I imagined. As I say, I could have used any of the other metal powders. That was the nearest I could get. But of course all the chrome had gone on these, it was all pitted, and so I had to wet and dry it and get it as smooth as I could, and then give it a coat of zinc spray just to seal it, But it did come out very smooth actually, which is why I got such a good cast on here. Yeah, that's stunning really. Like I say, the only difference is the weight. The other thing I have to do is reinstate the paint. There's remnants on that one. So I'll have to put the green back in. There's green and a sort of post office red, not a cadmium red. And they'll look fantastic. This one, actually, that would have been bottom right, I think. That one. So with that one, because that's the copy, isn't it? Top right, on the door, is this plate. Now, originally, I noticed this when I first looked at this machine. That slot had some bits put in it to fill it. I don't know if it's been brazed, welded or what. But that would have taken the old penny. And for some reason, at some time in its past, it was converted to 1 new pennies. I'm sort of in two minds whether I should convert it back to the old pennies, which would be traditional, or because at some point I want to take this machine to work, it'll be next year, to raise money for Great Ormond Street, because it'll be a bit of a magnet for people, won't it? But I'm thinking 10p, is that asking too much? I don't think it is. So maybe when I cast this, I'll open this slot up again and make sure that the machine will accept 10p. It only needs a few modifications to do that. That's a bit of a corroded one, isn't it? Yeah, so that's a raging success. The mould, by the way, just finishing up, came out clean as a whistle. Look at that. Lifted out all that silver powder with it. As I say, this goes a very long way, this stuff. Well, that's the end of Ralph's house this week. A bit longer than the last two, isn't it? Thanks for watching, and hopefully in the next one we will start reassembling the front door and the case, and then we can put the guts back inside it, and then we'll have the Bryans Pillwin working all over again. Thanks for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.